Are your Google reviews vanishing? Is your website traffic plummeting? Or even worse, are competitors going and messing with your listing on Google? These are not just random issues. 2024 brought a lot of major changes to the world of local SEO that could seriously impact your business. From Google new review jail to trends that we've been noticing with mobile search results, today we are going to cover 6 different trends in the world of local SEO that are flying under the radar. If you rely on local SEO, you need to be aware of what's happening right now. So let's dive in.
Remember when Joy exposed that shady business that was buying 5-star reviews and somehow getting away with it? Every time Google took down hundreds of their reviews, they just bought more. But guess what? 2024 has brought a game-changing shift. Google has a new weapon against fake reviews and barely anybody's talking about it. So Joy, what's going on?
To recap what I pointed out last year, there was this business that my sister hired who completely ripped her off. Now, what she did is she had a flood in her basement, needed to hire an emergency plumber. She went to Google to search for one, and she found this business that had all these glowing, lovely 5-star reviews. So, of course, she hired them, and then later on realized that this business actually has a terrible reputation. They have an F on the Better Business Bureau. They have a 1-star average on Yelp, and they're also on Canada's Consumers Watch list. So this is not a business that she would have hired if she was actually aware of their real reputation. Of course, this business was buying reviews, specifically on Google, to make it so that customers that found them in the search results would call them. I wish I could say this was an isolated case, but we actually see this over and over. And the frustrating thing is I actually reported their reviews to Google over the course of a year, several times, and every single time, Google will remove hundreds, if not thousands, of fake reviews across all their locations, and then a month later, they'd be right back up to where they were before because they just kept buying new reviews.
That sounds awful. I'm sorry for your sister. In fact, she had to go through that. So what has changed?
Yeah, well, if you look currently on Google, and no, I'm not going to name who this business is, but their current average with most of their listings is somewhere between 1 and 3 stars. So it tells a clear picture of what it's like to actually work with them. The reason why they have been unable to increase their rating like they were before is this new concept that I'm calling review jail. So yes, I made up that term review jail. That's not an official Google term, but I felt it was fitting based on what I'm seeing with businesses that are buying fake reviews. And how it works is if Google catches you, and that is a big if, a lot of businesses do not get caught, so there's that disclaimer, but Google actually has the ability now to block a listing so that it can't get new reviews. So now when this business goes out and let's say they're trying to buy more, those new reviews will not publish. The really crazy thing is currently in North America, you wouldn't even know if a business had a review block because as a consumer, you can still go and leave a review and the button is still there and everything looks normal. The reviews just don't publish.
Joy, we've definitely seen an increase in business owners over at the Google Business Profile Forum complaining that this customer said they left me a review, it's not showing up, etc. But I also feel like that's been happening for a while. This new stuff, do you think it's related to a lot of those comments we're seeing at the forum? Or do you think this stuff that we're talking about today is like net new?
Yeah, so I want to clarify. There's a review filter that filters out fake reviews and reviews that Google frankly doesn't trust. That is very different than a review block. If you have a review block on your listing, none of your reviews are going to publish. If things are getting filtered, it means you'll likely see some of your reviews publish, some of them will not, and they're not the same thing.
That's good clarification because there's definitely both things going on and we see lots of people complaining. So I think understanding that there's 2 distinct different things happening here, really critical to know. Okay, so we've seen some stuff shared on LinkedIn, Twitter. Mike Blumenthal mentioned this. I think he was the first person that mentioned this. He showed an example of some crazy stuff that seems to be happening to Google business profiles in the UK specifically. Tell us a little bit about that. And also let us know, is this stuff coming to the US or is it going to stay in the UK?
Yeah, so in the UK, Google has recently come out with a label that they put on business listings that they catch with suspicious reviews. This is really similar to what we've seen Yelp do for years, but it is a very different experience when it comes to Google. So essentially, if you go to a listing now and they have a review block, you'll actually see as a consumer that Google has removed reviews from the listing. And it shows this little warning label. Google also says that they will retroactively remove a whole bunch of reviews as well. And that's in the wording that you see on the listing.
Wow. So we've got review jail. Are we giving this a name? I think I've seen label of shame thrown around. But I've been, since I heard about this, I've been trying to put myself in the mind of a consumer that's trying to select. I've got these 3 different businesses that I'm trying to choose from. If I saw that label on a business, there's no way I'm going to do business with that business. No way, especially if it's in, a your money or your life type category. So to me, this seems like a really big deal.
Yeah, and to clarify, it's all the same thing. I'd call it all review jail. Just in North America, the business doesn't get a warning. They don't get any notification or any email from Google saying, hey, by the way, you have this label on your listing. So I think it has to do with the laws over there being different and Google has to comply with those. But over here, I'd say it's a little scarier because you don't even know if it's happened. Google doesn't alert you. You just stop getting new reviews. And then you have to try and figure out if you actually have a block on your listing. And the only way to really confirm it is to reach out to Google support. They will tell you. And we have been tracking lots of cases for businesses that have gotten these over in North America. So it is happening over here.
Insane. So how long does this review block last for?
Yeah, so this is the crazy thing. The cases I've been monitoring, it's a long time, like 6 to 8 months. So that's not uniform for every business. I think it varies based on the behavior. I think Google also monitors this kind of thing. So if you continue to buy reviews, it's going to stay on longer. So it is, I think, an actual effective way for Google to combat fake reviews, which are just such a huge problem in this space.
And as we mentioned earlier, this is not something that a lot of people are talking about. This is relatively new. So anybody watching, please, if you're seeing examples of this out in the wild, whether it's your business or a business that you work with, let us know in the comments and sort of what you're seeing, how long this stuff is lasting for. We'd love to see examples. Okay, so that's a long time for the block to last. Pretty detrimental stuff. How do you get the block removed?
You can't. You're literally not able to do anything. Like I've talked to business owners that are panicking and they're like, there's got to be something. I'm like, there's nothing. You are literally in Google's hands. You broke their guidelines and there's nothing you can do to speed it up. So Google will basically tell you if you reach out to them, we're actively monitoring your listing and we'll remove the block when they deem fit. So there's really no control here, which is, again, why I would caution businesses. I think there is finally a reason, aside from ethics, to not buy reviews.
I think one of the biggest things here is based on some testing we've done historically where we discovered that one of the biggest ranking factors when it comes to reviews is all about velocity. And in one of the tests we did, for instance, we had this business, they were getting a nice consistent number of reviews over time for like a period of years, and they suddenly dropped off. So the volume went from a certain number each month, dropped off. The rankings simultaneously dropped off. So I think that velocity thing, the fact that you're going to lose your velocity of the reviews coming in is going to be the biggest thing here. And I can see this being devastating for certain businesses.
The only negative that I see here is that this isn't something I've seen a lot of. So I've seen a lot more businesses buying reviews that are not getting this penalty than businesses that do get it. That being said, if this is something that Google decides to ramp up, it should make people think twice about buying fake reviews. I'd love to hear if you guys have seen examples of this, businesses that have gotten this penalty, how they've responded, how long it took. Please make sure you leave us a comment and let us know about your experiences.
Have you ever read a glowing review and thought, is this even real? Well, you're not alone. In 2023, Google cracked down on 45% more fake reviews than in the year before. But despite the crackdown, fake reviews are still everywhere. So why do businesses still buy 5-star reviews? And more importantly, what are the hidden risks that nobody's talking about? If you own a business or trust online reviews, you're going to want to hear this.
So on my very long 16-hour flight to Uganda this year, I decided to listen to a whole bunch of SEO podcasts. And there was one in particular that caught my interest that was on Craig Campbell's podcast. He was talking about basically people that buy reviews and discussed this interesting trend or pattern that he had noticed. Basically, Google has a filter to figure out if your reviews are real or fake, and they use a variety of factors. What he was talking about, though, is that if you are a business that Google has seen a lot of fake reviews for, and they've removed a lot of those reviews, it actually makes it so that the filter on your business is stricter. So imagine this. You have a business that buys a bunch of reviews. You get a review block on your listing for, let's say, 6 months. Well, guess what? After that review block is off your listing, you're going to have an insane time trying to get new reviews to publish, because you'll send your listing to real customers, their real reviews. But because you violated so many of Google's guidelines, that criteria that they have is so much stricter that it actually makes it harder for the business to recover.
That is fascinating. I wonder, Joy, and maybe you haven't even thought about this, maybe you have, over time, does this evolving restriction filter, however we want to think of this, does it change? Like, for instance, you've got a certain level of like a block because Google's like, man, 40% of your historical reviews were fake. So moving forward, you're going to have trouble getting them. Can you get to a point that you're aware of where that like you're on this end of the spectrum, no reviews coming through? Can you move it back to the other end, get back into Google's good graces?
I mean, I certainly hope so. But so far for the businesses that I've seen, it's been hard, like, to get off the ground. So it's like running a race with weights on your legs, like significantly harder to get those results. So again, I think Google is actually moving in the right direction with the way that they are tackling this fake review problem. Because before this year, I really wasn't seeing a lot of patterns that gave me any hope. And this is the first time that I'm like, oh, wow, there are severe consequences. Not only could you have a review block, but now you're actually going to have a really hard time getting legitimate reviews as well if Google catches you.
We talked a little bit earlier about buying reviews as being something you probably don't want to get into. I feel like you've heard a little bit more of this through Craig's podcast, maybe some other ones as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the general trend that I heard on all the podcasts I listened to is that people that are selling reviews are having a much harder time getting reviews to stick than previously. I actually heard a few people say that they've actually given up on it and they're not even bothering anymore, which is great. I personally don't want a world that is full of fake reviews on Google.
It's also good for all of our WhatsApp accounts because they're going to be less saturated with people trying to sell us fake reviews. So I think that's good for humanity, really.
Yeah. And I'd love to see, like, in general, you guys finding that the trend is getting better or worse? What are you seeing with listings on Google? Are you seeing more fake reviews? Are you seeing less? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Feel free to drop us a comment. We respond to all of them and read them all.
Have you noticed that your website traffic has dropped dramatically over the last year? You're not alone. Google has been making some huge changes to its search results layout that's left many businesses, especially dentists, scrambling. We're going to share some things we've been observing with the search results that I haven't seen any other SEOs discussing. We've got data from 4,000 dentist profiles that reveals the real impact. You're going to want to see this.
Yeah, so last year there was a huge change that impacted the dental vertical, but we've actually seen this happen to a bunch of different industries, and Google doesn't really say when they're going to make this change. It just kind of comes out of nowhere. And this change that I'm talking about is a layout change that we see in the search results. See, typically when you search on Google, you get a local pack that shows up, and it has free listings on it with a website button. So users can click the website button and go to the business website. What we saw happen last year was they actually flipped this for dentists. We saw it kind of gradually happen throughout the year. Now I see it for most dental queries. And instead of showing a 3-pack that has website icons, they show this 3-pack here that has images. Now, this impacts like 2 different things. First of all, on desktop, it severely lowers the number of clicks you will get to your website from local pack rankings. So that's something to be aware of. But then also on mobile, it gets rid of your call button. So people that can easily tap the call button and click to call you now have to actually click on the image, then they see your phone number. So it's a lot more work.
That's wild. I'm trying to put myself into Google's shoes here. Why would they do this? From a consumer perspective, I'm having trouble trying to see where this makes sense. maybe by the time we're done talking about this, we'll come to the conclusion that it does make sense. And one observation, I was just thinking here, Joy, before you go on with this, what probably is also happening when this happens, if somebody clicks on the first result, for instance, in the local pack, right? There's no call button, there's no website link, just a photo. Once you click on the business, I think what happens is it changes the search bar. It changes it to almost like a branded search. And one of the things I've noticed, maybe you've noticed this too, if you look in your GBP insights, going back to maybe around the same time, you often see in the query section more instances of like the business name plus the address. And you're like, why are people searching for the business name plus the address? Do you think that's related to this, where people are like, no website to click, no button, let's click on the brand name. And then that triggers that impression in the GBP insights dashboard?
Yeah, so personally, I think this is stupid. I don't know why Google does this. I mean, I've seen them do it with pest control. I'm like, first of all, who wants to see a picture of a bug in the search results? Like, how is that more useful and helpful than showing me the business's website or phone number? It makes no sense. And I've heard some people that put on their tinfoil hats and they're like, oh, they're doing it to drive more people to ads where, you know, there are click to call buttons. Like, fair point. Maybe that is their objective. I actually have no idea. But I definitely don't think it's a better user experience. And I definitely think it's not better for the business, because what we ended up seeing when we looked at a bunch of these dentists is the amount of clicks to their website dropped substantially with this change. And I was curious because I was only looking at a few and I was removing all their branded traffic just to see how it impacted searches like, you know, dentist near me, teeth whitening near me, that kind of thing. We definitely saw this drop on various dentists that we looked at. But I was curious if we looked at a ton of listings, if we could see the pattern clearly. So I reached out to Jepto because they have a tool and they integrate with tons of listings. And they pulled data for me across 4,000 dentist listings when this change happened. And you can clearly see in these graphs here, there's a drop in website traffic. But you can also see a drop in calls. Again, these are click to calls. This is every time somebody taps that call button on mobile, it tracks that. And you can go into your Google listing and you can see in that performance section, there's that graph. So if you didn't realize what was going on here, a lot of people could panic and say like, why are my calls going down? In reality, it's like the click to call is going down because it doesn't show up anymore. Like there's no button there, so nobody can click it.
So Google's removing instances of website links showing up next to Google business profiles. Does this mean your website isn't as important as it used to be?
Definitely not. I'm not saying, hey guys, your website doesn't matter, you can leave it alone. We still see that the website is the biggest way to impact rankings on Google, the biggest way to do SEO and make your business rank higher. So you definitely still need a website. Where it really creates a problem is tracking, because obviously you have to track different sources. And personally, I'm a big fan of call tracking, and this is one of the reasons why. Because we didn't actually see a drop in calls for some of these dentists when we looked at their call tracking. They're still getting calls. It's just not being reported in this section anymore because that feature is harder to get to.
Yeah, and I think this is why we track multiple places for our clients, include those with our monthly reports, including tools like Jepto, where we can show the clicks, the call trends, etc. And then that way, if something goes wrong, you have good data that you can start as your starting point for troubleshooting whatever the issue is.
Yeah, and I personally don't like this change. I'd love to see what you guys think about it. Do you like these image packs? Do you find them more helpful or useful than, you know, traditionally showing a website or a call button? Tell us in the comments. Tell us if you've seen this in your industry. Hopefully they don't continue to roll this out to more industries, but honestly, I really didn't expect them to do this for dentists. Like, again, who really wants to look at pictures of teeth? I don't know. But I'd love to hear some feedback from what you guys are seeing as well.
Why didn't this client lose calls even though their ranking dropped on Google? We see this mistake a lot in SEO. Today, we're going to reveal the hidden factor that most SEOs miss and how it can make or break your success in local search.
So we had a client who dropped out of the 3-pack. They were in position 3 and they went to that dreaded position 4. So we had a meeting and we were talking about this client and why they dropped. And I was looking at some things. And then what struck me as really odd is when we were looking at their call volume was good. No bad trends in this graph here. Everything looks great. So it was a bit of a head scratcher. And then we started looking into more data, and we saw that basically most of their traffic and calls were coming from mobile. So I was like, I wonder how this search result looks like on mobile. So we pull out our phones, we're doing some searches, and very quickly realized that on mobile, for this same keyword, it only shows 2 results, not 3. So literally our client was never in the 3-pack because there isn't a 3-pack. There was a 2-pack, and he was number 3. So dropping out from 3 to 4 was not nearly as crucial or scary as we had originally thought, just because of how different the search results were on a mobile device compared to a computer.
Okay, Joy, wait. So you're telling me that even though their rank dropped, their calls remained the same, or certainly didn't drop as well, and it was simply because the mobile search results look different than the desktop search results.
Exactly. And we ran into this again with a different client who is a real estate agent. We're looking through their Google business performance data. We're looking to see what their top keywords are. And I was really shocked to see real estate plus city as one of their top terms. And the reason why I'm surprised is that term, when you search it, doesn't normally return local pack results. It's strictly organic. Like when you look on a computer, type in real estate in any city, the majority of the search results are like Realtor.com, Zillow, sites like that. You don't actually normally get local realtors. The crazy thing is you do that same search on a phone, you now get a 3-pack. And I started checking a whole bunch of different search results and found that that trend was pretty consistent with most of our real estate clients.
Okay, so if there isn't a local pack for desktop, it can still show up on mobile. That's something I bet most people don't even check.
Exactly. Most rank trackers don't even have the option to scan on mobile. So I was chatting a bit with the developers over at Places Scout and had them add a few features in. And we actually switched all of our tracking so that now we're tracking mobile specifically instead of desktop, because we're seeing more and more that our clients are getting a significant amount more traffic from mobile devices than they are on computers. So if we want to mimic where their traffic's coming from and monitor their rankings there, we really need to be checking the mobile search result.
And just as a side note, with that same tool from Places Scout, one of my favorite things is the fact that they store the screenshots so you can look at the SERPs. And as far as I know, Joy, maybe you know the actual answer to this, but they go back in time, I think like forever. Like they'll save screenshots till the beginning of time, where I know some other tools will only keep those screenshots for a limited time just due to cost and stuff like that.
Yeah, and another reason why I'm a big fan of screenshots is that like sometimes you can see your ranking second in a local pack, but that local pack is like way the heck down at the bottom of the page. And that's another thing that varies quite a bit between mobile and desktop. On desktop, often there'll be a 3-pack like way low on the page. Let's say after the 6th or 7th organic listing, you do that same search on your mobile phone. You also get a 3-pack, but it's way higher. So we're just kind of seeing that Google seems to be pushing local results a lot more on mobile devices than they do on computers.
Yeah, and if you're not tracking mobile rankings, you really need to be, right? You might be missing out on calls and traffic. And also, guys, please, if you're liking this video so far, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell us what you're using for mobile SERP tracking if you are. And if you're not, it's probably a good time to start doing that.
Yeah, the key takeaway here is next time you see your rankings drop, don't panic. First, check to see if it's even resulting in a decrease in calls, because we see a lot of business owners kind of freak out for no reason. In this case, there was no reason to panic. There was no negative impact to this business just because they went from position 3 to 4. Important to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I think as Andy Simpson and Mike Blumenthal would say, if it's a Friday afternoon and you check your rankings and this happens, crack a beer, chill, and check back on things on Monday, and you'll probably be fine.
Solid SEO advice right there, folks.
People were shocked when they started seeing kiosks rank on Google Maps because they're not traditional businesses.
Redbox was one of the first businesses that shocked people when they started getting listings on Google Maps. After all, Redbox, they're not a business. It's not a place. It's literally a machine that you walk up to and rent DVDs from. Okay. Remember those? Those used to be a thing. Now, the funny thing is, it's not a specific thing to Redbox. We've seen quite a few business models adopt this kiosk model. I've seen locksmiths do it. I have seen moving companies do it. and a bunch of other industries that I wouldn't have expected to have kiosks. And it's become popular to the point where Google has actually set up a specific set of guidelines around when a business is allowed a listing for a kiosk.
I think that's a good starting point, Joy. So what are the rules?
Yeah, so let's break it down. First of all, it's not as simple as like you have a kiosk, just drop a pin, set up a listing. There are some rules and not everybody qualifies for one. For a kiosk to qualify for a Google business profile, there are 3 main criteria that it needs to have. First of all, it needs to have a phone number that is different than the store it is located inside. So using Redbox, for example, if it's inside the grocery store, the phone number for Redbox cannot be the same as the phone number for the grocery store.
And I think a good point on that one, Joy, is there's algorithmic implications and real world implications. Google's telling us they want us to do this for the user so they have a good experience. They call the right person that's listed on the kiosk. There's also issues with, like if you use the same phone number as the store that you're located in, it could cause duplicate issues, for instance. So that's another thing that makes sense and why you'd want to have a separate phone number.
Yeah, actually, pro tip right there. You almost never want to reuse the same phone number across multiple Google business profiles. You are just setting yourself up for disaster because those merges, you can't really undo them easily. They're just a headache you don't want. So good point, Colin.
And another good point of that, we've also seen many listings that got suspended not be able to get reinstated because of issues with the phone number appearing on multiple other places online. So just don't do it.
Just get a new phone number, really.
Get a new phone number.
All right. So the second rule is that the hours on the listing need to actually reflect the hours that you can access the kiosk. So, if the doors lock up and it's inside the building, you can't say that it's available when it's actually not.
Okay. So wouldn't we just want to list it as 24 hours though? Because hours are part of the ranking algorithm now?
I mean, I probably wouldn't for a kiosk. Again, unless it's accessible outside. If it's outside the business and you can get to it 24 hours, like ATMs, for example, then sure. The third rule is that these can't be temporary, right? A lot of Google business guidelines focus around that. It's the same thing for like business signs. If you want to have a sign for your business that Google will actually accept as evidence that your business is real, you can't just simply stick a sign on your front lawn and be like, yeah, we exist here. So it works the same way with kiosks. They can't be temporary. They can't be one time. It has to be something that is permanently there and that is going to be accessible for a good period of time.
Okay. Quick recap, Joy, because I know you probably have a few more things to say about this. Unique phone number, hours that are actually contactable, like you have to be able to access the kiosk. And then this isn't temporary stuff. If you're setting up a kiosk, it's got to be a permanent fixture wherever it is. As long as you nail those 3 things, you're probably going to be good. But I think you have a few more things to say about this.
Yeah, actually I lied. There's a little more than 3. I said there was 3. There's a couple more that sometimes apply if you don't have staff. I was actually trying to think of like, when does a kiosk ever have staff? But I guess there are some instances where they are staffed. But most that I'm thinking of in my head don't have staff present. In that case, there's a couple more rules that you need to be aware of. The first one is that the company should have a store locator page on their website that clearly identifies where each kiosk is located with the address, phone number, etc.
That one's interesting, Joy. I don't think I've personally heard that one before. Where did that one come from? Is that explicitly called out in the guidelines?
I don't actually think there's a help article for any of this. Part of why I wanted to make this video, because I've been kind of talking to Google a lot about these rules. And I was like, we really need to publish some guidelines around this because I don't think these are listed anywhere, to my knowledge.
Got it. So it's just, this is from our experience. This is what we've seen over the years. And again, it goes back to the theme we've talked about in some of the other videos is it's a much better use of time to pay attention to what Google does out in the wild so that you can understand versus explicitly reading everything Google says in the guidelines. Of course, the guidelines are important, but observational, experiential stuff is really what becomes important.
Yeah. And then the other guideline, if you don't have staff, is there has to be a way for them to contact you if they have issues with the machine. Like it breaks down, it's not working, something's wrong. There needs to be an easy way for customers to contact support. So this could be as easy as like putting a phone number on the actual machine. Again, not on the screen, because what if it shut off? What if it got unplugged? So I would make sure that that is something that is somehow worked on to that so that the customers can easily find somebody.
Very cool. I wonder if that will change once we get artificial intelligence to a certain level where you're essentially interacting with a kiosk that can handle everything. I'm sure that's not too far down the road.
I really hope not. I mean, goodness, I have a hard time with customer support for most companies as it is. I really don't want to talk to a bot. But hey, you know what? I get why companies are moving in that direction. I just can't stand it.
Okay, cool. So it's got to have a phone number, or maybe it could have something like live chat. Who knows? Go on.
Yeah. So last one is keep in mind you can only have one listing at one location. I don't know why you'd ever want to, because there's filtering that goes on. But, lots of people have this general idea that more listings is better. So that's just another thing to keep in mind. You cannot have two listings at the same address.
Yeah. And I think this whole idea of listing kiosks really has like significant business implications.
Yeah, I'm thinking like another one that might qualify. So I know you can rent like rug cleaners, carpet cleaners, things like that. Those often have kiosks and they're kind of go help yourself. And I do think that this is a business model that there's actually a lot of industries that could apply it to their business, right? If there's some way for you to have a self-service kind of machine that fits all this criteria, I mean, it's definitely a lot cheaper than having leases everywhere, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of these kiosk type listings for other industries that don't currently have them.
Yes. And I think we could also expect that as soon as an industry discovers that there's an option here that they can bake into their business model, they're going to double, triple, quadruple down on this, like we've seen in the key duplication kiosk world, where I think in one presentation, Joy, you showed how the number of KeyMe kiosks from one year to the next, I think doubled the amount of locations. It was crazy. They were sprouting up everywhere.
Yeah, the locksmith industry in particular, we were tracking that number. It was wild because you can create a bunch of machines a lot faster than open, a bunch of offices. So I'd love to know if you've seen this in other industries. We've mentioned a few. I'd love to hear about like what are some of the craziest industries you've seen this in, and do you like it? Like, do you like these machines? Are they helpful? Do you think this is a good move? Google allowing them on Google Maps? Tell us what you think in the comments.
Earlier this year, something crazy happened to one of our clients. Somebody moved their Google Maps pin hours away from their actual location. And you can probably guess what happened next. Their rankings completely tanked.
While that might sound a little extreme, this actually happens a lot more often than people realize. Now, sometimes it's a competitor doing it maliciously to try and screw over the business, but sometimes it's like an accident, like somebody's actually trying to correct your location. And the reason why we want to talk about it is that if you correct it the wrong way, the results can actually be pretty devastating. So make sure you watch all the way to the end of the video to hear exactly how you should deal with this problem so that you're not stuck with the headache that so many businesses have run into that we've been helping on the forums.
So what are businesses doing wrong in these situations?
So this is one of those cases where the general reaction that seems super logical is actually the worst one. So I think about what I do. Oh, I get an email saying that this pin moved and it's wrong. So what would I do? I would go into my Google business profile inside the dashboard and just move it back, right? Seems very simple. That is exactly what you should not do. And I'm going to explain why.
Okay, so let me get this straight. A competitor goes and maliciously moves my pin super far away from my location. Then when I do the logical thing, which is to go into my dashboard and edit it and move the pin back, Google suspends me?
Exactly. We've seen a wild amount of suspensions because of this. It's really stupid. And to be clear, I'm very confident that some of these pin moves are by competitors because some of the extreme examples that we saw earlier this year, they were like moving them into a desert. Like there's no way that this is someone that has like good motives when they're making these things. And the other thing to keep in mind is that your rankings are not based on your address. They are based on your pin. Where your pin is where you rank. So this is part of the reason why I think people were doing it as a negative SEO tactic, because the fastest way to get rid of all your competitors, just like move them all to the desert.
Like what exactly do you do when this happens? Because if Google suspends your profile, I think everybody's aware of this, it's devastating, right? You're getting no calls, you're not ranking. If you're lucky, maybe it's a soft suspension, but I think most of the cases we've heard around this specific scenario, they're hard suspensions, like you're gone. What do you do?
Yeah, you definitely don't want your business suspended and yanked off of Google so that you're nowhere to be found. And it's super frustrating. Like, people are really pissed off about this because they're like, wait, somebody could do something malicious. They get away with it. And then when I try to correct it, I get suspended. Like, really wild stuff. But the good news is there's a way to avoid all that. So I'm going to tell you what that is. You want to use a different Google account. Now, I'm going to repeat that. Not the one that you use to manage your listing, a different account. Like, most people have multiple Google accounts. If you don't, ask your brother, or your mother, or your wife, whatever, somebody other than you who does not have access to your Google business profile. Tell them to go on Google, go to Google Maps, suggest an edit, fix the pin that way, because that won't trigger a suspension and everything should be good to go.
In your experience, Joy, when doing that, is it usually pretty quick? Like one edit, it happens, or should people be prioritizing finding their friends who are local guides to make these edits? Does it matter?
Yeah, so try a couple. And if it doesn't work, like none of the edits publish, just reach out to Google support. Ask Google support to move it for you, because they can also do that on the back end, and just say you don't want to risk a suspension, so you're not going to do it yourself, and ask them if they can correct it. Maybe send them a screenshot of like where exactly on the map that they should move the pin to. And again, if that all fails, go to the Google Business Profile Help community. We're well aware of this issue because we've seen it happen so much over the last few months. So one of the product experts there should be able to help you out as well.
Has this ever happened to you or someone you know? If it has, let us know in the comments below. Share the story. The more cases, the more we can get out there, the more information we have to go back to Google so that we can hopefully eventually get to a point where this is no longer a problem.
Yeah, and this whole pin moving thing is just one of many reasons why it's important to keep track of your Google business profile. Make sure you're getting those alerts when any changes happen to your listing, because it's just not a situation that you want to be in.
And we're here to help, guys. Please subscribe to our channel, like this video so that you can get notifications for all the future content we put out there about SEO scams. We want to make sure as many people as possible know about this stuff so that we can fight back against it.
Yeah, and next time you run into this issue with somebody moving your pin, don't panic. Just make sure you use the suggest and edit feature on Google Maps, like I mentioned, and you should be fine. Nothing to stress about.
And most importantly, make sure you don't fall into the trap of making the edit inside your dashboard. Every little piece of your brain is going to be screaming, that's the logical thing to do. Don't do that. Please avoid getting suspended.